I've lived in Bedford since the 3rd grade. I moved here from Manchester. And from a young age, I've always had a love and interest for helping people. This started in the 5th grade when Ms. Toland introduced me to the Community Action and Service Team. This is basically a club centered around helping people in the community and throughout the school. So a lot of that year I spent helping the facts teacher and the librarian, and from there my love for helping people just grew. And I started to help other organizations as I got older, like the Manchester Animal Shelter and the YMCA. In addition to my love for helping people, I also love animals. In the slide here I have a picture of all my pets. The black cat is Malcolm, the tortoiseshell cat is Hazel, the big dog is Simon, and the little dog is Lacey. And next year I'll be attending Springfield College for counseling psychology. So my essential question is, what does poverty look like in New Hampshire? So how can we directly and indirectly help this cause? And what are the emotional and social effects of this issue? What do people know, and what needs a lot more awareness? I chose this topic because poverty is a multifaceted issue. It has a lot of different faces. It doesn't just exist in third world countries that we're always hearing about. It exists right under our noses in New Hampshire. It can be anywhere, like I just said, and it has a lot of different factors that are contributing to it. So the goal of this project was really to help destigmatize poverty and help people see that just because someone's in poverty doesn't mean they're a bad person. I really wanted to help educate people on this topic. So again, the idea was to just educate people on the issue at hand and emphasize that it's not a result of laziness. So my big challenge here was to make the presentation very engaging and to really get people to listen, but at the same time reaching a wide demographic. I didn't want it to just appeal to adults. I wanted teenagers and young kids, or anyone who was able to understand the message, to be able to get something out of it. My outside expert was Carrie Soucy. She's pictured at the bottom there. She's the youth minister at St. Elizabeth's Seton. She's been a huge help to me. She helped me develop my AOK a lot as far as making the presentation engaging and interesting to a wide range of people. And she also helped me facilitate the Walk for Hunger, which was the second part of my AOK. So we raised some money for New Horizons and did the walk. She's been very encouraging throughout the entire process, and she's given me a lot of constructive feedback and advice. And the result is what you guys are about to see. I'm going to show you the educational PowerPoint I created about poverty, and I showed this to about 100 7th and 8th graders. So what is poverty? Poverty is hunger. Poverty is homelessness. Poverty is needing medical care and not being able to access it or afford it. Poverty is not having access to education or having the resources to get an education. Poverty is unemployment, and poverty is fear of the future, living day by day. Poverty is not an accident. Like slavery and apartheid, it can be removed by the actions of human beings. So just because this is an issue doesn't mean that we should just sit back and do nothing about it. It doesn't mean that our government's not doing enough. It means that we need to be helping too. This is a video that I showed to the 7th and 8th graders, and what you're going to see in the video is actually an activity we did.
I once saw a high school teacher lead a simple, powerful exercise to teach his class about privilege and social mobility. He started by giving each student a scrap piece of paper and asked them to crumple it up. Then he moved the recycling bin to the front of the room. He said, "The game is simple. You all represent the country's population, and everyone in the country has a chance to become wealthy and move into the upper class. To move into the upper class, all you must do is throw your wadded up paper into the bin while sitting in your seat." The students in the back of the room immediately piped up saying, "This is unfair." They could see the rows of students in front of them had a much better chance. Everyone took their shots, and, as expected, most of the students in the front made it, but not all, and only a few students in the back of the room made it. He concluded by saying, "The closer you were to the recycling bin, the better your odds." This is what privilege looks like. Did you notice how the only ones who complained about fairness were in the back of the room? By contrast, people in the front of the room were less likely to be aware of the privilege they were born into. All they can see is 10 feet between them and their goal. Your job as students who are receiving an education is to be aware of your privilege and use this particular privilege called education to do your best to achieve great things, all the while advocating for those in the rows behind you.
So this really goes to show that there are a lot of factors that go into poverty, and this is one of those unchangeable factors known as privilege, and this will greatly affect someone's socioeconomic status growing up. And that leads us into what the next slides are on, which is what does poverty look like financially. So the numbers on this table here are derived from MIT's website. MIT put together a bunch of tables for every state showing what the living wage should be, the poverty wage, and what the minimum wage currently is, to demonstrate what the gap is between the living wage, and the poverty wage. So in New Hampshire, our living wage is $11.43 for one adult, the poverty wage is $5, and our minimum wage is $7.25. This next slide is the breakdown of the expenses. So what does it cost to live? So 25% of the money that you have monthly is going towards housing, 17% towards childcare if you're an adult with one child. Transportation is about 14%. So if you notice, housing is about $716 a month, and that's 25%. That's a huge chunk of money, but there's still a lack of affordable housing. And medical is another one, which is why programs exist to help people who can't afford medical coverage. But what we really want to pay attention to right here is the other category, which is $2,096 a year, or $174 a month. So what is in this other category that is left out of all those other numbers? Our minimum wage for one adult, they would be making about $15,000 a year as a salary. Living wage for that same adult would be about $31,000. So if you multiply those numbers by 2 and make it a 2-adult family, 2 adults making minimum wage is about $30,000 a year, whereas 2 adults making living wage is about almost $64,000 a year. And that's a gap of about almost $34,000 yearly. That's a large gap. Why is there such a gap? So we go back to the other category. Looking at all these expenses, what is left out of those calculations? We have car insurance, school supplies and things you need to get an education, clothing, home renovations and repairs, student loans, home appliances, TV, internet and cable, phone, gifts, and savings. And again, that number is $2,096 a year, or about $174 a month. You can't get all that for that $174 a month. That's what the other category has to cover. This is all the stuff that's missing because of that gap. These are things that you could be missing because of the gap. Or with the lack of affordable housing, because you're spending so much on housing, you don't have money for medical or car insurance or paying your student loans. So now we have the just world fallacy. This is where we believe that the good guys always deserve to win and the bad guys always deserve to lose. These are the people who think that if you do bad things, only bad things will happen to you. If I do all good things, nothing bad will ever happen to me. But this is building a false sense of security. If we believe that, we're committing the just world fallacy. The world is not a fair place. Bad things can happen to good people. To demonstrate this issue, there was a social scientist teaching a college class named Melvin Lerner. And around 1966, he conducted an experiment. He went out with 2 identical puzzles and gave them to 2 people. And he had the men solve these puzzles. They were randomly awarded prizes. It didn't matter who solved it fastest, who did it better, who did it more effectively, etc. They were given the prizes randomly. When he conveyed these results to his students, they all thought that the person who had solved the puzzle, who got the prize, was a better problem solver, smarter, talented, more productive, when in fact they weren't. They were just randomly given the prize. This goes to show that there are more people than we believe who are falling victim to the just world fallacy when we shouldn't be. So during my presentation with the students, I posed them with this question. You can handle any task as long as you try hard enough. And I was expecting a lot of them to say true, and in fact a lot of them did. So what I did to demonstrate to them that this was false is I had a student come up who had answered true, and I had a jar of Biscoff with me, which is just like a cookie spread, because I didn't want anyone to be allergic if I had peanut butter or anything. And I gave him a ladle. And I told him, with the ladle, I want you to get the Biscoff out of this jar. And he couldn't do it. All the while he was doing this, I told him, well, maybe if you had a more positive attitude, you could get it out. Or if you really wanted the Biscoff, you could get it out of the jar. If you were just trying hard enough, you would get it. But he still didn't get it. So what does this say? Even though people are struggling or having a hard time, that doesn't mean that they're not trying their hardest to get out. There are other factors involved in that. And that brings us into what contributes to success. Success is influenced by where you were born, where you grew up, the socioeconomic status of your family, privilege, and random chance. All the hard work in the world can't change these initial factors, but that doesn't mean you should give up. People get out of bad situations, but that doesn't mean that those still in them aren't trying their absolute hardest to get out. If you think otherwise, you're committing the just world fallacy. If we look at homelessness, this is one of the larger parts of poverty. It was one aspect of poverty that we covered. And often if someone's facing homelessness, they're facing some of the other factors of poverty too. So if we look at the biggest piece of the pie, you have mental illness. About almost 25% of those who are homeless have some sort of mental illness. 17% have a physical disability. 19.2% are victims of domestic violence. And we have another 16% who are chronically homeless, which means they've been homeless multiple times within the past few years. So all of these are factors that these people can't change. You can't control or predict that you're going to be a victim of domestic violence. Or if you have a mental illness and you're homeless, you're probably not getting the help you need. Or if you've been chronically homeless, you're struggling with some of these other issues. That doesn't mean that we should just be judging these people when we don't know what they're going through. So instead, when we see a homeless person, we shouldn't just ignore it and walk by. We should be doing something to help them or telling them about what we know. Poverty is a cycle as well. By age 4, poor children have heard 30 million fewer words than those who are well off. And then poor children aren't going to do as well in school, whether it be due to lack of nutrition or they aren't able to study for other reasons. And they're less likely to graduate from high school because of this. And that carries on into adulthood. And if they have kids, this cycle just continues. What are the effects of being in poverty? Often kids who are in a home that's facing poverty, they're going to receive less nurturing or positive talk from home, and they're going to have an increased exposure to violence. They're going to have lower test scores and elevated levels of daily stress. They have a higher dropout rate, higher stress in general, teen pregnancy, and they're likelier victims of crime. They can also have health issues and reduced cognition. Even once these kids are out of these bad situations, the high levels of stress still remain with them. Even in society, when we see social experiments or when we see politicians or doctors, they're stigmatizing this group as well. They use separation like us versus them. Like, we're the good people, you're the bad people. You've done bad things to be where you are, we haven't. We did all the right things. That's not true. And they're using words like inner city, working class versus middle class, and low income, all to cognitively distance themselves from this demographic that we've been ignoring. But there are ways that they're being helped already, but that doesn't mean that they're enough. So this is a list of all the government programs that do exist to help the people in need. So we have the school breakfast and lunch program. We have Head Start, which will help educate children ages 0 to 5. We have the special milk program. We have food stamps, unemployment insurance, and women, infants, and children, which will help people with nutritional assistance. Quickly through these next ones, we have weatherization, so helping homes be more energy efficient, low-income home energy assistance, helping those with heating during the winter, employment insurance, Medicaid, children's health insurance, and financial assistance for needy family, which is just extra cash assistance during the month for those who are struggling. So just because those programs exist doesn't mean that there isn't any more to be done. There are these organizations that are helping others still need help. One of those is New Horizons. New Horizons, all of their money, 76% is from donations and fundraising, and even 38% in each of those categories. It costs them about $3,500 to run a day, which is ridiculous. For the Walk Against Hunger, they were asking for donations and for people to walk the distance of 5K. And so as the second half of my senior project, I, with the help of my outside expert, put together a group and raised about $847 for the cause, which would help them substantially, but still not quite enough. As far as reflecting on the project, the only regret I have is deciding to do the walk so last minute, because if I had decided to do the walk earlier, I would have been able to advertise it better and raise more money for the cause. What I hope that you guys have hopefully conjured up from the presentation is that just because people are in poverty, it doesn't mean that they're bad people. It doesn't mean that all of them have done awful things to get there. It means that there are programs out there, but they're still not doing enough, and we should be helping them in any way we can. We can directly help them by volunteering at places like New Horizons. It's a homeless shelter, and it's a soup kitchen and a food pantry. It helps those who struggle with domestic violence, even veterans, and they make sure that anyone who's staying there is going through a life planning process to help them get out of their situation. With that in mind, there are other ways we can indirectly help, like donating money or doing events like this. My takeaway piece has to do with indirectly helping those in need. So my takeaway piece is going to be clown noses. Red Nose Day was on May 26th, and this was a fundraiser to help specifically children in poverty. So for every $1, it was a meal for a child living in a homeless shelter. $5 was antibiotics to help treat the child with pneumonia, and supplies for a mobile clinic that could go around places. $35 is an eye exam. $50 provided baby vaccines and checkups. $7 provides books and reading materials, helping with the educational aspect. And $4 was an anti-malarial net for a mother and her baby. Over the past 25 years, this organization has raised $1 billion, and they do this fundraiser every year. It's really a great organization. For my takeaway piece, I bought about 35 clown noses, and just looking at those numbers, even that little amount is doing a lot for these people. Half of the money from this cause is going to the US, and half is going to the neediest countries in the world. So if you decide to donate to this cause in the future, it's not just helping those in the US, it's helping those all around the world. I'd like to go over my thank yous. So thank yous to my outside expert, Ms. Noble, my senior project teacher, my parents, and my family who has come here today, and anyone who has watched or given feedback on my presentation at any time, my panel, the technical support, and Gabby filming, and my audience.